I hope you guys have watched these in order. It'll make more sense for you if you do. I'm back with this session, and I want to bring an underpainting of Bailey's face back since I changed the pose. And even though Glory's face is still out of drawing, I wanted to go ahead and get Bailey's face back up so they'll look like they're halfway related to each other in the painting. Not related, but that they're in the same painting. So just roughly sketching out the features on Bailey's face. Measuring. Training my eye to what her features are. It looks very painful, very much start and stop. Sometimes it is. I try to listen to music with my headset or with books on tape. It tends to quiet my critical left brain. Even though I show you later in the video some of the tools I use, one of which is on the monitor screen there to my right. The colors are off, but I can use the rest of it for the drawing. I also use a 100% size laser print, color laser, and from that I make a tissue paper tracing. This is a tool that I use after I've worked on this part of the face raw, without a pre-drawing, without a projection, without a tracing. I find it helps me, well, that's part of that I enjoy, is trying to get a likeness and get the measurements right. When you're painting from life, you don't have the luxury of a picture or a monitor or a tracing. So if you ever paint from life, you'll understand the significance of that. I am going into the lights a little bit too early, but hey, that's all right. It works for me. I've painted Bailey before, so I am familiar with her face. I know her. I don't know Gloria yet. Sometimes that makes a difference on how you portray someone's personality. A good portrait artist is not after a photographic rendering. They are after something that tells a story about the moment that they're in. If you want a photographic likeness in a painting, my advice is to get a large photo, get it printed as a giclée print, and hang it on your wall. Those usually don't show the hand of the artist when they're painted. Take that back. The paintings that are done so skillfully they look like a photograph don't show the hand of the artist. I like to see a few bobbles here and there. I like to see some texture changes, color changes. I like to know that I'm looking at a painting that someone worked on. It's funny when I look at this from a camera's perspective after the fact, I can see that Bailey's chin is way too big. I can also see that Glory's face is way too straight. The bridge of her nose and the bottom of her chin are almost in a straight line. But as I said when I started, you have to start somewhere. You don't know at this point whether Bailey's chin is off, too big, or her nose is too small, or whether the spacing between the eye and the mouth is off, which will make the chin change. So your best bet, or my best bet anyway, is to get as much of it down as I can, and then slavishly go back and measure and see where I'm off, see which features are correct, and then build from there. A very experienced portrait artist will be able to do that his first time through. Some can, some can't. That's why you never see some of them do a demo with their whole painting process. That's why I like mixed media artists so well, is that they share everything they do as they're doing it. Oil painters, not so much. They'll show you the end result. They might show you the beginning. They won't show you this ugly stage where every painting goes. Every painting goes. Not just a few. The experienced artists have them too. Bailey's skin is more of a peaches and cream complexion. Glory is a little bit more olive toned skin. So in in the back of my mind the whole time is that they are in the same photo, supposedly. I had to manufacture it. So the lighting has to appear the same, but then the skin tones can be a little different. So you can see now that I've pretty well got things blocked in. All of this can change. All of it probably will change. And that's one of the things I like about oil, is that you can manipulate it up until the day you get tired of working on it and you say, I'm done. As I stated in the very beginning, I use a prismatic palette. I use a warm and cool of each of the primary colors. Those can vary, but I typically use the same ones because I've worked with them enough that I pretty well know ahead of time what each pigment will do when it's mixed with the others. I try to work with the biggest brush I can. I slipped off and used that small brush in the beginning, but oh well. I fairly well got Bailey's face blocked in. Now I've pulled out that oversized, or that actual size laser print I showed you. This is a good time to point out that what I have on my monitor is a little bit bigger than actual size because I'm sitting 2 or 3 feet away from it. So I have it so that when I hold my arm out straight, the measurement on the monitor matches the one on the canvas. So it's more like a sight-size drawing. And you'll see me measure every way I can. I tend to lose mental focus, and I sometimes forget what I've measured by the time I turn around a second later and go back to the painting. I know it's pretty bad, but I have 2 or 3. I always measure several times and turn around and double check myself with the monitor, double check myself with the laser print. That's a big nose hole right there, but that'll go away. Sometimes it's easier to make a big mark, make a big statement, and then cut back into it with the appropriate color to cut it back to size. It's a good way to get a thin line without agonizing over finding a 1-hair brush. And that chin is still huge. Not her real chin, sorry Bailey, but her painted chin. Juts forward. You can see from this photo, I did move her head from the computer-generated printout. I moved Bailey's head back to the left just a little bit to give Gloria a little more development space. And I didn't really want to have to mess with Bailey's ear. It's not important to this composition. Right there on the edge as well, it would tend to you'd go straight to it and see it. So just kind of smudge something there and lets people know that you knew it was an ear, but you don't really want them to look at it. The dark shadow around Bailey's face is one of the last things to go. It was in one of my last edits. I use permanent green light for my shadow tones when the form curves away from the light, it turns into a cooler version of itself. So that means that your flesh tone closest to the light, which in this case would be that white streak on her cheek, that curves back toward the ear, and underneath the cheek it forms another ball. So there'll be some green right there, right where I just touched, and then it'll curve down as it goes under the neck. Those areas will get a little bit of green, which will accentuate the turning, and that's what gives a shape its form. If you broke the facial structure down into balls, and you knew how to paint a ball with the light hitting it where the reflected light is, where the real light, the highlights are, the shadows, the midtones, you could paint a face with no problem. But what tends to happen is we get all wrapped up in the feature. We catch ourselves drawing a mouth, painting a mouth, rather than painting ball shapes. So I always tell my students, look for the ball shape. The upper lip has 3, or you can play around with 3. And then, of course, when you blend them together, if they've got the shading of a ball, it's easier to get the form of the different crinkles, bends, and folds. I teach what I most need to learn. It's perfectly fine if you want to fast forward through some of these. This is the actual painting. I have not cut anything out. I have fast forwarded it 4 times. And the reason that I don't talk as I'm painting is that I lose my left brain's in too much control and my painting isn't as good. And when I'm doing a portrait or a figurative work, I need my left brain to shut up. My favorite way to paint is to have music in my ears with my earphones or have a books on tape. The spoken word will keep that left brain entranced, and then your right brain can do what it was trained to do. I just put a little bit of flesh tone down over that green. It's toned the green down, but what the green does with the flesh tone's made up of red and yellow and white, is they're complementary, so what you get is a little grayed down version of the flesh tone. I don't like to use blues on my forms or where it turns away from the light, because to me it makes it look dirty. More like a 5 o'clock shadow that you paint a beard with. There are a lot of artists who do use blue for that shadow. Here I'm diddling. I'm getting into the detail way too quick because that eye may have to move. But the other thing it does at this particular stage, for me anyway, is if I can start to get a real likeness, it's somehow easier for me to go back and make those corrections. Adding another pretty thick layer of paint on top now of the underpainting. At this point, I'm still trying to get Bailey's face, or not still trying. I am working to get her face to the same level of completion as Glory's. There will be 3 or 4 or 5 layers on each face, so if I can keep them relatively close together, the painting can grow as a unit rather than as 2 individual people. Always quick with that rag to wipe it off if it's not right. You can use a palette knife to scrape it off. You can use a Q-tip. You can use a rag. I asked one of my watercolor instructors, his name's Charles Reed, R-E-I-D. When he draws on his paper to get started, he does a modified contour drawing, which means that he tries not to take his pencil off the paper unless he reaches the edge. So he tries to draw on one continuous line. Every time he takes a break to really study something for a few seconds, his pencil would just stay on the paper making a little scribble. I asked him, I said, what are you doing when you're doing that little scribble? And he said, that's where I'm deciding which way to go next. When you see me diddling with a nose hole or an eye or something like a highlight on a lip. That's my version of deciding what I'm going to do next. So I just kind of keep things moving even though they may be totally wrong. And one of my oil painting tutors, my main oil painting tutor for figurative work, Leslie B. DeMille, he can paint almost an entire portrait from life using a 1-inch brush, bristle brush, and his strokes are confident and sure, and he makes a mark, leaves it alone. His style of painting is a little more impressionist than mine. I also studied with another portrait artist, and his style was a little more like Bouguereau, which was very realistic. Skin tones almost look like you could reach out and touch them. So his skin tones didn't have any texture in them, and so I kind of fall somewhere in between the two. It evolves. Now I'm making Bailey's eye bigger, and I'm moving it over to the left where it should be. So I decided that the bridge of the nose was fairly correct. I think that's an oxymoron. Fairly correct. Does that mean also not right? Now in the process of making the mouth wider. Another thing I might point out here is that even when you get the drawing correct, it still may not bear a resemblance to the person you're doing because the color values and the lights and shadows can still be wrong and it still look like somebody else. So everything has to balance and be worked together a little bit at a time until you bring the whole painting up to completion. It's a dance. A little bit here and a little bit there. Gradually, it all comes together.